Bitcoin as a humanitarian tool. And a lot of people come to Bitcoin through this human rights angle, this charitable angle. And I want to share a teeny tiny story about Antonia. It's not embarrassing, I promise. Don't give me that look. When I first met Antonia, she was working at Save the Children. She had a very high-flying position there, and she was experimenting with doing Bitcoin stuff. 2 years later, I think, you became the Web3 lead at Save the Children. And today, I'm delighted to say that on the flyer, on the website, Antonia is now the Bitcoin lead at Save the Children. So she's gone from, just investigating it to, I guess, Save the Children made you the Web3 lead, right? And then you've worked and you've strived and you've become the Bitcoin lead. So that in itself deserves a round of applause. So well done, Antonia. Awesome stuff. And yes, with that, let's invite you to the stage today. Her talk is called How Bitcoin is Being Used as a Humanitarian Tool by Antonia Roupell. Take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. You said it wouldn't be embarrassing, and it was. Web3, no, not at all. Hi, everyone. So this is my clicker, right? Yeah. So I'm Antonia Roupell, as you know, and I'm passionate about the humanitarian sector and Bitcoin. I've been working in the aid and development sector now for almost 2 decades. And I believe Bitcoin has a major role to play in changing the way our organization and our whole sector works for the better. I'm here today to tell you how Save the Children is actually leading that work. In order to get to the solution, we do need to deep dive into the problem. And there are many problems facing human beings today, facing our sector. It's needless to say, as an organization, we witness the sharp end of human suffering around the world. But by the end of this session, I hope to have swapped a bleak or a black pill with a slightly more orange one. So you've probably heard of us. We're the world's leading child's rights organization. We are in more than 100 countries active today, reaching more than 100 million children every year. I've been at the organization, thanks Joe now, for 8 years, and I've been lucky enough to be deployed to many of the responses that we have around the world. And it's been a deeply humbling experience to see the life-changing, life-saving work that our organization does on the ground through my colleagues, all local, doing this work every day. There is no doubt that crisis brings out the very worst of humanity, but also the very best. A little bit of context, a little bit of history. We were founded 106 years ago in London in the aftermath of the First World War by this trailblazing, and I might add very elegant lady on the left called Eglantine Jebb. And the very first major response that Save the Children had was during the Volga famine in Russia, which is estimated to have killed about 5 million people back in 1921. Jebb and her team were really instrumental in getting global attention on this crisis, in sending supplies and setting up food kitchens, like the one you see there. At the same time, Save the Children is famous for, and of course Jebb herself, for penning or writing the first Declaration of the Rights of the Child. That's the document you see there, which was later adopted by the League of Nations in 1924, and that original document is here in Switzerland, in Geneva. And it's these child rights that remain at the core of our organization and what we do today. And that is the belief that a child anywhere in the world has the right to be protected from harm, has the right to healthcare and health services and nutrition, and has the right to have an opportunity to learn, so access to education. Last year, you can see these big, bold figures here. Last year, we reached 16.9 million children with our emergency response work. We reached 28.9 million children with health and nutrition. And we reached 7.5 million children with education services. So that's everything from providing safe spaces in conflicts and mental health support for children and their families, to malnutrition treatment, to building schools, providing learning materials, and training teachers. This means, of course, that we work in the hardest places in the world and the harshest places to live, places affected by conflict. Today, around 500 million children live in conflict zones. That's 1 in 6 children globally. Picture of Syria, Afghanistan. We work in places impacted by natural disasters. So last year, 250 million children's schooling was disrupted by climate events, climate extreme events. You've got the flooding in Pakistan on the left, and you've got northern Turkana, Kenya, affected by drought. And of course, conflicts and disasters lead to many things, but they certainly lead to mass displacement. What do I mean by displacement? I mean people who are refugees, people who have to leave their homes, but also people who are displaced internally in their country. And we've seen the displacement numbers last year have doubled globally, so that's definitely going in the wrong direction. Last year as well, we've seen the highest number ever recorded of IDPs, that's people internally displaced from their homes, at 83 million people. These numbers are pretty hard to comprehend. That image on the left there is actually one of my first deployments. That I took that image in Bangladesh, Cox's Bazar, where home to 900,000, I believe, Rohingya refugees who fled Myanmar. The image on the right there is South Sudan. Those are families fleeing the conflict in Sudan, entering South Sudan. I believe 6.5 million children have been displaced since that conflict began, which makes it the largest child displacement crisis in the world. It's heavy stuff, but we're getting there. What happens? All of these things, mass displacement leads to mass unemployment, leads to mass poverty and hunger, and of course the high levels of aid dependence that we are overwhelmed with today. What am I sharing with you here? Last year, 18 million children were born into hunger. And of course, the result of financial crisis, cost of living, food prices are meaning less and less families are able to feed their children adequately. Even in the US, you've got 1 in 5 children hungry. Now, less visual, but no less damaging and certainly compounding in their humanitarian effects are monetary disasters. A lot of people are familiar with these places, but I just want to confirm that Save the Children works in every single one of these countries that have experienced hyperinflation peaks in recent years. So, I mean, these numbers are in the billions when it comes to hyperinflation with Zimbabwe in 2008 and 2009. But we also look importantly at the numbers of unbanked. So what do we mean by that? We mean people who don't have access to adequate banking systems, the ability to send, earn, save funds. And those numbers are really high as well. You've got in Syria, I think it is 77% unbanked. In Sudan, 80% of the population unbanked. Quite unthinkable today. These are pretty shocking statistics, and no doubt a skewed global financial system built on short-term extortion is partly to blame. But I don't study statistics and numbers or the markets, I study people. And the real lessons I've learned have come from these brave families in their time of need that have shared with me their stories. And they've taught me that financial inclusion is not just about freedom, security, and opportunity. They have taught me that financial inclusion is very often a matter of life and death. I've spoken to hundreds of parents, and something that's really struck me wherever I've been, no matter the nationality, no matter the religion, no matter the background, one thing that seems to unite everyone is the desire for their children to have the chance of a better life. It's that simple. Their children to have a chance of a better life. And the thing that's obviously devastating is that in many cases, their children are worse off. So, what are we going to do about it? And how can the humanitarian sector optimize and integrate technologies like Bitcoin? I think part of the answer lies in how we operate with money, how we transfer funds around the world. We raise as an organization around $3 billion a year globally. Those funds are immediately deployed to support our response work around the world. And we don't hold back to get to difficult to reach areas. We will use all these means available to us by foot, by boat, by horse, by truck, by helicopter, camel, drone, phone, you name it. But when the transfer systems, the money system at its base and core, is slow and stuck or fails, all of these things become slow or impossible to execute. I speak for our sector as a whole when I say we face real challenges in getting funds to the people and places at speed when they are needed most. I want to share a few more tangible examples. So money transfers are infrastructure dependent. You can see there the Syria-Turkey earthquake that struck in 2023 that affected 23 million people. Now, 73% of local banks were closed at the time because of the damaged infrastructure and, of course, damaged access to getting cash. This meant delays in some cases of many weeks in us being able to get funds to earthquake victims. And, of course, Gaza, another example of infrastructure dependence. I went to Gaza a few years ago, and it was hard enough to get funds into the Strip without an active conflict going on. Since the devastating conflict, 98% of Gaza's banking infrastructure is out due to the aerial bombardments. And of course, things like less talked about things on the news, certainly, things like the severe liquidity crisis and the inflation rates in Gaza of about 130% have had a huge compounding effect on people there. I spoke to my colleague last month who told me if you're lucky enough to find these supplies in the market, because of the, of course, extreme shortage, you'll be paying over $100 for a kilo of tomatoes. So back to the money. Why else is it difficult? Well, because money transfer systems are process heavy and permissions dependent. I was on call during the Sulawesi earthquake in 2018. And it took me, which struck Indonesia, an island in Indonesia, and cut out most of the services to that island. It took me 2 days and 3 flights to arrive on the island from London. And I arrived before the global financials money could get to our Jakarta office. So I traveled faster than the money did. But even when disasters strike locally, for example, or domestically, Hurricane Helene that struck the US in 2024, it can take days for banks to clear payments and for money to be released. So we as an organization have to preempt where emergencies are going to hit so that we reduce that delay and that we can reach people. Suffice to say that we're operating in a less than perfect system, and it's certainly given our team a lot of food for thought when we look at permissionless, decentralized, and peer-to-peer technologies. Another area that I think is really interesting and that we've already started exploring the integration of Bitcoin in is in something called cash assistance. So what is cash assistance? Cash assistance is giving people money, right? So it's one of the fastest growing areas in the aid sector. It's a more ethical way to enable a family to decide what's right for them. What do I need to buy for my child? I don't need flour, I need to pay for their operation. So money is ultimately what people need and want in a lot of the cases that we work. And our role is to identify where the funds are needed most and where they'll go the furthest. So which families will need those funds. Last year, we did $137 million in cash assistance, being transparent, sharing as much as I can here, to almost 1.5 million families. Here you can see it's via physical cash, via mobile money, via e-cash, or electronic vouchers. And the top countries that we responded to with cash assistance, as you see here, are Somalia, Ukraine, Nigeria, Yemen, Afghanistan, and the occupied Palestinian territories. We expect to significantly see an increase in this area, not just in our organization, but across the board. Finally, to some Bitcoin to change the mood. Save the Children was the first, very proudly, the first international NGO to accept a Bitcoin donation back in 2013. That was in response to, thanks guys. That was in response to Typhoon Haiyan that struck the Philippines, and a donor that had Bitcoin and a vision and said, I want to give you this, and we found a way to accept it. Since then, we've raised about 12 million in cryptocurrency across the board donations. And these are the kind of memes that we use normally around giving season just to incentivize and also educate people about the benefits of donating. But now, crypto giving today is mainstream. Most large organizations will accept your cryptocurrency donation. However, if you donate Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency, you can be sure it's getting converted immediately, auto-converted to fiat. I think we can do better. So one of the things that I focus on is how we look at Bitcoin as a utility, to really explore the technology and how it can be used as a medium of exchange. And the only way to really learn in this space is to test and to pilot, and that's what we've been doing. So we've been testing Bitcoin solutions since 2023. The first example there was a partnership with Stackwork, enabling youth to earn Bitcoin via mobile money in the Philippines. So that was youth on their phones, doing micro work and being paid small amounts in Bitcoin for that work. And it turns out that it makes sense using Bitcoin and Lightning payments when you're sending cross-border funds in incremental amounts. The other thing we did is last year, we partnered with the open source and super app developers Fedi to basically test using community cash assistance. How can we empower a community to be their own bank, accepting Bitcoin, but also ultimately being able to convert that and off-ramp that as needed? And we carried out a workshop, which you can see the image of there in the center, just last month in Bhutan, empowering youth with financial digital education and also learning how to use the Fedi app. The response was really positive, and 90% of the participants said they would recommend the Fedi app to their peers. So we're now looking at taking Fedi to a rural community in Bhutan and testing that to enable them to basically be able to transact. They're a remote farming community, to better transact and to communicate with each other. And of course, we advocate and we share our learnings, as we should. This year, we became part of HRF, which is the Human Rights Foundation's Humanitarian Alliance, where we basically advocate for the use of Bitcoin for human rights. Oh, back, sorry. So as you've gathered by now, the people we support need supplies urgently. They don't have the luxury to save Bitcoin and wait for the number to go up. They need to off-ramp, and they need to buy supplies immediately, and they need to be able to off-ramp into their local currencies. But essentially, what these pilots so far have shown us is that, yes, Bitcoin is an effective tool, especially when it's interoperable with stablecoins. So we need to stop piloting, we need to start integrating, and we need to start scaling. This leads me to today's announcement, which is that we are launching Save the Children's Bitcoin Fund, the very first of its kind, the first ever Bitcoin-powered humanitarian solution, where Bitcoin donations, thanks guys. So now Bitcoin donations to this fund will be held in Bitcoin, and better still, they will be directly deployed in Bitcoin to supercharge our work by unlocking maximum value, utility, and financial education to the people that need it most. How it works. We've partnered with the best, certainly who we think are the best, the digital asset service providers Fortress, with a focus on Bitcoin. And they enable us basically to custody that Bitcoin securely. So for donors who want to see the value of their Bitcoin grow in fiat terms, and the value, therefore, also of their impact for kids, we will pledge to hold that Bitcoin for a minimum of 4 years. After that time, we can convert it, and it will go to our global programs that you see on the far left there. And for donors who want to see us deploy their Bitcoin donation directly, we will take that donation and that gift, and we will use it immediately in our cash assistance-powered work and in our education programs that are Bitcoin-focused. Our impact and scale. In the first year, the ambition is to raise 100 Bitcoin. The impact, more importantly, is that, for a good example here, is that we would use Bitcoin as part of our US emergency response to support at least 500 families during the next US emergency. and then ultimately scale. We want to reach at least 200,000 people with Bitcoin-powered assistance and financial inclusion education by 2030. Why now? Well, I think you probably established why now. But we have clearly been, as an organization, early Bitcoin pioneers. However, when we see the extent of the problems that we witnessed, I think you can all agree that we're quite late. The government aid cuts have been pretty immediate and really brutal and devastating. But they've also been an opportunity to decentralize our dependence on governments and institutions and truly innovate. I believe we can make changes from within the system. It's why I'm here. And I think it's our mission-critical duty to do so, or at least to try, given what we're facing. The time for Bitcoin in the aid sector is clearly now. It was built by Bitcoiners, I'd like to say, for Bitcoiners, this fund. It's years of listening to people's feedback that have enabled us to lay this groundwork. So a genuine thank you to everyone who's taken part in that. We now need your collaboration to activate and make this a success. We want to partner with people building practical solutions. So please get in touch and please find out more. With your help, we can continue to promote freedom-enhancing and freedom-preserving technologies like Bitcoin. Finally, I want to end with this lady and a quote from her, which I think is as true today as it was then. She said, "It's impossible only if we make it so. It's impossible only if we refuse to attempt it." Thank you for listening. Q&A?
Everybody, please give a round of applause. I'm going to be filling in for Joe Nakamoto. I'm like the B-level Joe, I guess. Anyways, my name is Nico from Simply Bitcoin. Please give a round of applause. It is about saving the kids,